Must pay your bill. Yeah, I got to
Just in time.
It is 5 o'clock. I will call this meeting to order. This special meeting to order. We can't make any change to this anyways. If somebody would like to move the adoption of the agenda.
I should know with that.
Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Brady, he might have. Okay, the only item on the agenda is our delegation, the emergency management workshop.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Doug McGraw. I'm a senior consultant with Transitional Solutions. And with me, I have Harry Holmes and Judy Unsworth. And we're going to talk about regional emergency planning. And we're going to do a slide presentation and we'll take any questions that council has. You can jump in anytime as well. With that.
Sure. Thank you for having us. It's good to be back in the area. Family is in here. So we're just down the hill from you. So it's nice to be back in the area. So we'll just flip forward to the agenda tonight, just to go over what we want to talk about. So we really want to focus on what the objective is of tonight's session. We'll go through the SWOT analysis results. We'll flip that over to what that looks like in a TOES matrix. And then we'll talk about the strategic path forward and really what the ask is of this session today. So we've introduced ourselves, so we can skip this one. And please, again, jump in at any point through this. So
I'm going to try to be pretty informal here and just speak as we do, and Carrie and I are going to try to muscle through this together. So go ahead. Sorry, did you want to start? Oh, perfect. So across all the surveys that we took here, there was a broad support for a stronger regionalization, but not fully giving up your local authority. Makes sense, right? Elected officials were unanimously positive that the regionalization would improve capacity and capability. And the CAOs and DEM respondents were also unanimously positive. At the same time, all of the groups were wanting to keep the declaration of the state of local emergency. Well, makes sense to me. The biggest difference when we surveyed it was elected officials were more confident about the local capability than were the CAOs and DEMs. So the CAOs and DEMs understand a bit of a shortfall, and council believes their staff can do the best they can, but there is a bit of a shortfall. So operationally, the CAOs and DEMs throughout the survey were very clear that the current pressure points were staffing depth, IMT, which is Incident Management Team capability, and 24/7 coverage and training and exercises.
out of all of this feedback, what we want to look for is to get the region to a place where you're all in alignment on what governance model will be in operation when an emergency happens. So looking at all phases of emergencies, we want to look at that mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery, and take that regional approach. But first, that means that everything has to align starting at the top, which means getting that governance piece in alignment. So if we skip to the next one, that's what we're trying to figure out, is what governance model will work best for the 3 municipalities. So there's some definitions, and I don't know if you brought that handout. You don't need to memorize this, and I recognize that the font is very small, and everything starts to sound the same in emergency management. So just some things that we'll talk about. So we'll talk about the Emergency Advisory Committee. Easy way for remembering this is committee is at the council level. So that's when we're making strategic directions and authorities. Then we have the Emergency Management Agency. Those are your doers. That's who's boots on the ground out organizing. That's where your DEMs sit. And then we have an incident command post. And that's where we have all the folks running the event in a response. There's also an emergency coordination center. You may remember that used to be called an emergency operations center, an EOC. Now it's either an ECC or an ICP, or people are blending them. And so there's lots of stuff that will flush out in the emergency, the regional emergency response and management plan that will make those very clear who's doing what in when in what structure, supported by the governance model. So in order to build the regional emergency management plan, which is the focus of the project, the outcome of the project, we really need to understand that governance model so that everything else falls into alignment. Because they're going to be making decisions that we need the governance authorities to be making on the ground. And we can't be figuring that piece out when the floods are here. So lots of work with that emergency coordination center, that ECC ICP gets confused and blended and blurred. Governance will help sort that out. Then there's the ministerial orders, which you're all familiar with, and there's some models that may require a ministerial order if you go that direction. And then we have the incident management team. That's the group of people that are running the fires, they're running the floods, they're dealing with the actual event itself. They sit in an ECC or an ICP. Now that we've had alphabet soup, that's all I'm.
So all of this still dovetails with ICS, right?
All under an ICS structure. Yes, absolutely. And that's mandated by the Emergency Management Act. Yeah. Your ICS, and that's where folks will think an incident command post.
Yeah.
You'll picture that org chart with all the colors of your incident command system. That will fit there. And then your incident command post then will be supported by your emergency coordination center.
Yeah.
Most people will assume, and quite often your ECC will be a lot about your business continuity for the most part. In a larger event, it will be supporting more of the logistics of the IC. But again, governance to sort that out so everyone's making the right decisions at the right levels. Yeah. Otherwise,
To
it
get
gets
the regions order compatible.
Yeah. Exactly. So there are 5 different models. You have your baseline model, which is your individual municipal model. So you, as the town of Redcliff, are running your own emergency management. You do your own thing. You are independent. You rely on nobody else. That's one model. It is still used across the province. There are many municipalities that do that. 2023, 2016, 2013, 2011 were all events and years where folks started to learn that working individually doesn't work well. This group was really modern when you first built your agreement. I believe it was 1995 was the first agreement.
First major.
And you did a regional emergency management plan back then, before it was ever really a thing legislated. So very innovative. You realize that you need your partners, and emergencies happen across borders. They don't recognize the municipal boundaries. So huge kudos to you for that. The second model, which is probably the most common model, is the mutual aid agreement with your regional partners. And that's what you had established in 1995. 2010, you redid the agreement, and then 2019 was the last time it was in use. It has since been disbanded, is our understanding, but you are in a mutual aid agreement. So that's, we're going to work together, we're going to share when we can. Everybody's in the same sandbox. Then you have a regional services commission, and that's a big jump to that because you'll have its own legal independent entity. Thank you very much. And there is only one of these in the province right now for emergency management. That's in Beaver County. It's not working well. It hasn't been working. It doesn't function very well. Lots of turnover with leadership and such in there. So there is only one of those in the province. So typically we have not been recommending that model. Then there's a joint emergency advisory committee, and you do that through a ministerial order. And that's where you decide that you want to pool your resources and have one regional DEM that looks after all 3 municipalities. So if an event happens, that regional DEM now looks after or makes decisions on behalf of all 3 municipalities. Or you can have a joint emergency management agency, also through ministerial order. So this is not at the committee level, but down one level, agency, and that agency is now doing actions on behalf of all 3 municipalities. You can have a joint emergency management agency with a mutual aid agreement or with an emergency advisory committee. It can be an add-on to any of the others as well. Those are the models we're looking at. There is one more, but it's applicable to summer villages only, so nothing for you guys to worry about. So those are the models that we're looking at. So we'll just flip to the next one. And a description of the models was just handed out to you with more information on that. We did not write this. This is from the province. back in 2019 when the legislation came out with the options for them. So more information in those for you to consider. That report document will also be available in the report that we provide to you in the next couple of weeks. So when we look at the models, I like pictures. It tells me a little bit more like menus. I like to be able to compare models, especially when shopping in Costco and I want the different dishwashers. So we put this up for you. And again, we'll have this in the report for you. You want to take a look at what you're gaining out of some of these models and what you don't get out of them. So for the most part, a lot of when you're by yourself, you're doing everything by yourself. Funds are your own, training's your own, planning's your own. You own a lot of it, but that means you also own all the costs. And what municipalities find is they're really good at doing it by themselves for about 24 to 48 hours. And then they've depleted their staff and their resources. Or it's gone into another municipality and now you didn't get to choose your neighbor and choose who gets to play with the sandbox. You are now forced to play with that municipality. So as soon as you start to get into that regional model, you start to gain a lot more resources. So you can still retain your own DEM. That's your Director of Emergency Management. So that's the person that's going to kind of own the emergency. You still retain that in a mutual aid agreement. Once you start to go into a Regional Services Commission or a joint committee or agency, now you have one for all three municipalities. So typically there's more flavor and appetite for retaining your own DEM to make decisions for your municipality, but to have the resources of the area, of the region. We'll just flip to the next one. This is where it starts to get crunchy. You'll start to see a lot more come with the Regional Services Commission and what they get to do. So a lot of authority comes away from individual councils when you start to go to a Regional Services Commission. They can now borrow money, incur debt, take land. You do also need the province. Just like with the joint committees or agencies, you do not need the ministerial orders. Those are a lot more work, as you guys are familiar with. So given all of this, this is in part why we are recommending the mutual aid model. It's a model you've already had in the past. To get it up to and to exceed compliance with current legislation, because the legislation has changed significantly since your agreement was last done, would bring you into a really great position without the burden of the ministerial orders, still retaining the ability to make decisions for your own municipality, still retaining your own DEM, but getting to share in the joint resources in preparation and mitigation. Go to the next one. Any questions at this point? I say it's a lot of alphabet soup and so you participated in the survey. What the takeaway from what we heard was you want to regionalize the depth, but retain your authority. And that's a great model to take on. We appreciate that. What that means is you want to, when you're filling out that incident management team and you're staffing that ECC or that incident command post, that you're not going to burn or burden out your staff. You can fill all of the positions that need to be filled. Quite often we'll see municipalities when they're on their own, they aren't able to fill all the positions, so they don't fill finance. And then they go, why did our bills come in? How are we at a burn rate of this amount of dollars on day 5? We're on day 50 now. We didn't know because we couldn't fill that position. With a regional model, if you don't have a position filled, you have depth that you can borrow from Cypress County, Medicine Hat. They come in, they're all trained on incident command system. So they're following that system. They're following those authorities under your DEM. So they don't make decisions that will jeopardize your municipality because they're still under your DEM, but they're following that ICS doctrine. So that was a big piece that we heard. You want to keep your municipal authority and your local identity, but you want to build that capacity within your organization. On to the next one. What we found interesting when we were looking at what you wanted to share regionally Where we saw alignment was on planning, training, your incident management team, your logistics. Again, these are all preparation pieces. So that's where the joint effort would be in preparing for this, training together, exercising together. When the response happens, you have depth. And in the recovery, you have depth as well to support, because the concept of the 72-hour emergency doesn't exist anymore. We burn out staff. We tell people to evacuate for 72 hours and they're gone for 3 weeks. And then it takes 6 months for your municipality to get back to regular operations. So that builds that depth in. The response, you still own it, but you have support for it. So that's one piece that we found really strong correlation. Where we saw a bit of a difference was in keeping that sole authority. We did see that the CAO's DEMs were a little bit more feeling like they weren't sure if that authority should stay solely with the municipality or if there's a regional maybe decision that could be made on that piece. So we need to dig into that a little bit more. Next slide, please. Next one. So what we saw here, there's strong trust, which is huge in an emergency. You have strong communication, you have great relationships already. Mutually, it already exists across the 3 municipalities. You function really well. You were at the forefront of regionalization back in the 90s. So we want to capitalize on that. Everyone felt that regionalizing would improve emergency management capabilities, capability, and increase maturity of the organizations. You've got a lot of depth to rely on from everybody. Where we saw weaknesses that were identified by the surveys was that long duration event. So when the flood comes and it takes 3-6 weeks to manage the response and recovery is taking 6 to 8 to 12 months recovery, that's where the depth is happening. And we've seen that across the province. It doesn't matter the size of the municipality. Individual municipalities are good on their own for 24 to 48 hours. After that, their staff are burned out. And we don't want to be calling regional partners in on hour 48 or 72. We want to call them in on hour 0. So that by the time our staff are tired, we're not extending that while we're now calling people and they're already there, ready to take over. Everybody saw opportunities for shared training, shared exercising. There was a lot of support for staffing that incident management team with a regional team. Not to be confused, the province also has regional IMTs that you can call in and should call in on day one. But pulling that regional team together, so if the event happens in Redcliff, you staff that incident command post with your folks, plus Medicine Hat, plus Cypress County, so that no one municipality is running short on staff. You can continue to offer services while the emergency is being managed. So really big push on that, what we saw across the board. And that's a really great model to be using. That's what the province does at the provincial level, is when they need a team to go into Jasper, Fort McMurray, or wherever that may be, they're drawing in folks, 1 or 2 people from a bunch of different municipalities so that we're not burdening one big municipality and we're providing support. By doing that too, you are building that capacity and that capability and that maturity in your incident management team, because Redcliff might only have 1 emergency every 5 years. Medicine Hat might have 1 every 5 years. So instead of gaining 1 year experience every 5 years, they're now gaining it every 2 years. And that's really important. Not that we want to have emergencies, better to do it through training, but it does give more experience to that. What couple of threats that were identified is leaving the current model as is. First of all, you're not under an agreement right now. So there is potential risk of being not compliant with legislation. There is also concern about the cost sharing, the liability risks, and if that's not clearly defined, what does that mean? And then concern about too much centralization could erode that local ownership. So every municipality still wants to own their emergency, but prepare together. We want to make sure that we're designing it that way. Next slide. This is pretty much the same, so I'm just going to flip to the next one if you don't mind. So again, I want to talk about like where you are now. As you're under a current mutual aid model. sort of. Because that agreement is an old one, and our understanding, like I say, is one partner has pulled out. Are you managing emergencies still? Yes, that is still happening. But what we're looking to get to is to that mutual aid model and formalize that. Brings you into the alignment right away with industry standards, with best practice, with legislation, but still preserves your local authorities. One day, potentially, you may look at more shared emergency management and maybe an agency. So now all of those workers in an emergency are under one agency. There may be benefit there to reduce more so the administrative burden. Right now, everybody's managing their own documentation. So there's 3 hazard assessments. There are 3 emergency management plans plus the regional management plan. So there may be opportunities there to streamline that a bit through an agency. There is a future option if you want to go to a regional services commission. We don't recommend that. That's not where you want to go. Definitely don't want to jump over to that right away. I say there's only one in the province right now, and it's not the model that we would recommend based on what we're seeing so far. So again, this is the model that we heard everybody's wanting from across 3 councils, from across the 3 administrations. It's one that we also support based on what we've seen historically and what's worked well. It's a well-proven model that requires the least amount of administrative burden from a ministerial order perspective. And again, it allows municipalities to own the response, but share in all of the other pillars of emergency management. Yeah, absolutely adds to it. Next slide. So there are some things we always like to talk about having some safeguards up or some riverbanks up to keep everybody swimming in the right swim lane. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. What we want to make sure is that the local, what we've heard too as well, is that your local state of local emergency authority remains with each municipality independently. We do want to ensure that there are activation thresholds, so we understand when do we kick in the regional model. At what point do we go, this is too much for us to handle, we need to kick our regional model in. So we'll need to make sure that those are well defined. We need to make sure that we're delegating any authority in writing, and that's that regional emergency management plan. That's why we need the governance model first. We don't want to write something that allows a delegation of authority to go somewhere you're not comfortable with as a council. We want to minimize that risk to you. We want to talk about a cost sharing formula. We can look at that and explore that. We'll provide options for you on that. And again, cost sharing formula isn't about the response. Each municipality will own their own response and have the cost of their response. Where the cost sharing formula comes in is in that mitigation and preparation. So the training, the exercises, and that typically is a lot lighter burden for costs than it is the response. The better we do in that emergency and mitigation piece, though, the better our response is, which equates to above, not least of all, protecting life property, but not having that economic burden as well. We want to make sure that there's proper accountability and reporting so that you as council know what's happening, understand what's happening, and are comfortable with what's happening, and understand what risk you are at as a municipality. And then we also want to make sure that there's a dispute resolution and review process in your regional emergency management plan. So those are the guardrails that we will be putting up once we understand what governance model you want in there to ensure that everyone stays within their swim lane. Okay, next slide, please. So what we are looking at is a 3-phase. What we are looking for in the next couple of months, obviously we're heading into summer, so we're not expecting a decision until August, September on this, is to confirm what model you do want to do. We'll be putting forward our recommendation on that in the next week or 2, but that's what we're looking for. Once we know what that model is, that triggers us to then begin building up the regional emergency management plan. That allows your DEMs to start to launch their update, their exercise program, get the staffing, build out that organization chart, and everybody can start to understand what falls into what pocket. Then in the next 24 months, 12 to 24 months, we're still hopeful that by the end of 2026, we can put this emergency management plan through a test run and do an exercise. We want council to be involved in that so you can understand how the decisions you made on the governance are impacting what that regional emergency management plan looks like in action. And we want to make sure it's functioning the way it was designed. If it's not, then that gives us an opportunity to correct it and make adjustments before it becomes adopted by councils. Well, that's where we're at and what we're looking at for the next 6 to 12 months. Next slide. Okay, so the SWOT gave us information. Now we need to do something with that information. So what we'll do here next, I'll get you to flip slides. We want to use the strengths that were identified to maximize on the opportunities that are out there. So again, launching that shared regional training, regional exercising, continue to build the trust that's already here. We want to create and regionalize the functions that give depth and resilience. Those are the biggest pieces that we really want to do. Again, keeping and preserving that municipal ownership. We're going to use the strengths to reduce the threats. Again, that's using the current mutual aid culture. I think that's a big piece and it really should be proud of that. It's not as common across the province as we would love it to be. When we were awarded this project, we were really excited because there are 3 municipalities that really get along with. That's exciting. So that's half the work done for us. We'll use your weaknesses. We're going to use the opportunities to minimize those weaknesses. Hopefully we can eliminate them, but we will use those opportunities. And then we want to also minimize those weaknesses and avoid the threats. So those are those guardrails that we're putting up for you in that regional emergency management plan. Just based on the years of experience we've had and all of the after action reviews, we've seen the pitfalls. So we're going to design those into your plan so that you don't hit those as well. Learning from all the others out there. Next slide. So again, what we want to do today is, and we're not expecting an answer today by any means, is just ensure that the objective that we have is to understand what governance model this council would like. And then we're going to get that answer from all 3 councils through your, I believe you're doing it through your intermunicipal committee, getting that answer there. So then we will then build that path forward for you. Besides building out that regional emergency management plan, once we know the governance model, our team will develop or will either revise or rewrite the agreements that you need to have in place to do so. We'll also update your bylaws and policies specific to emergency management so that everything is all ready to go in one package and there's no outlying risk. Then we're going to test those, the plan against what our assumptions are to make sure it's performing the way that we want it to and that you want it to. Then again, your choice as you go along and you're starting to work that plan. If you're finding that it's working really well for you and you want to go to a joint agency or a joint committee, then you can have those discussions again. But the mutual aid model will set you up really well for not only compliance, but actual functionality and how it works in practicality. That's the plan. Any questions? Should I go to the next slide? So again, what we're looking for is looking for that endorsement of a model. We will support that model through the development of your mutual aid agreements, your bylaws, your policies, and your regional emergency management plan. And then we will exercise it. Next slide. Any questions? Sorry, I did all.
You did it all.
They let me come out of project managing and come to place. So
She's our expert in this. She's very modest.
thank you. Any questions to any of the 3 of us?
Deer in headlights up here.
Anything we can clarity on or?
Is there a cheat sheet that all these acronyms, what the heck do they mean?
Oh,
Yes, when we give you the report in the next week or 2, we will give you all.
Is it all
It's
just-
so worth.
Just a bunch of stuff.
There will be a test, Larry.
Yes.
Just-
Yeah. I came from the lifeguarding world where I thought we use acronyms all the time, and then the fire world, and I thought they used acronyms, and then emergency management said, hold on, we can do
Yeah,
it
watch
better.
this.
Yeah, yeah. And it is still confusing. The province actually, not only with the Emergency Management Act, but the local authority regulation, then they have to have another document called AIMS, which is your Alberta Incident Management System, to keep explaining how this works. And then you add ICS into that Incident Command System layered on top of all of that, and everyone's really confused. So that's why we're really excited to write out a fresh regional emergency management plan for you that makes it so clear and easy, so people don't have to think in an emergency. They can just follow the plan and it works.
Different language.
It's a very different language and very different from 15, 20 years ago when emergency management wasn't really a thing. And now it is. It's, I came from municipalities as well for 24 years, and everyone kind of just did it on the side of their desk, and then it fell under the fire services because it had emergency in the title. And then we're discovering now that emergencies are a lot bigger than fire. A lot bigger. Sometimes we wish it was just fire. That's easy. We know the answer to that, fire services. Emergency management touches everything. It touches recreation, it touches utilities, it touches assessment, it touches all of your departments. So definitely unique.
So on our IMC, do you remember our action list? If this is even a blip on the radar, or do we go start from scratch?
Well, it's probably gonna, somebody's probably gonna bring it out and put it on.
Yeah, but it's not on there yet, right?
It wasn't that, where did the grant money come from?
That's what this is in regards to. So
Yeah.
when Merrick came, you weren't here at the time, but Merrick came and presented to
It
council
was
that
before you, James would have been,
the grant was
Oh,
received,
okay.
and that's what the grant
it was
was.
even as hasn't had me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a blip on their radar
It
then.
was kind of like he applied for it and then he thought he better mention it to everybody. It's one of those kind of
Medicine Hat employee?
things. Yes, Merrick Brown is their emergency management dude.
Interesting. Okay, any other questions or us? Tom?
That was probably not even a year ago, yeah.
And there's a test for you.
Open book test.
For you.
Let us give you the open book first.
They're all, it's way easier than plumbing.
Yeah, well, it seems to me I did this whole thing. I'm likely one of those few people that did this thing.
And what happened? Yeah.
Well,
You,
I got through it, but, and they confirmed that I went through the whole thing and eventually got all the questions answered.
And then I made you do it again,
Yeah,
with everybody in attendance.
it was terrible.
Like,
I feel like that's how I would
so
do my
you should
voting
have more
exam.
retention than any of us because every time you do it, more sticks.
Not really.
The theory,
Well, no, that is supposedly the real theory.
do they take into account the age?
Well, the key is absorb, not reflect.
Very well. We may be getting off topic here.
We have time. You have lasted longer than you need us to.
Certainly was quicker than I was expecting. But that's
I
okay.
didn't want to overwhelm you and make it too complex, because really it's simple. There's some ways to work together. We want to know which one you like.
Mhm.
Here's what we think.
Well, the old way only worked as good as the people there.
Correct.
That, and it doesn't matter what agreement you write up, it's only as good as the people there. When they want to work with cooperation, things will work great. When they want to kind of take over because they're the expert, then things happen.
I think that's partly why the mutual aid agreement model is so effective, because it's your DEM making the call. It's your staff supported by the region. Right? It's not the region making decisions, it's the town of Redcliff making decisions, supported by your partners that are all speaking the same language.
Yeah, we know our town and our needs the best.
But I think
I like that
in the old agreement, when the region kicked in, then somebody else wanted to have authority.
And that's where a really strong, well-written, simple, so you're not gonna get you're not paying us by the page. It's not a 400-page document you're gonna get. The less pages, the better.
Well, it's easy to read.
It's easier to follow, right? The last one we just did, we took it from 300 pages to about 30. So everybody.
No font?
Nope. Big font, big font.
Who's gonna know if?
So that I don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that really is just making clear, simple, plain language, clear on whose authority gets to do what, clear on decision making, clear on everybody's doing the training, and then the training that they're doing that is reinforced constantly. Yeah.
Simple makes a lot of sense. In time of emergency,
Simple to
you
simple.
need to be able to retain it.
Did
quickly and
Jasper
easily.
have one?
100%. Pardon?
Did Jasper have one?
Let's not do what they did.
Well, no, it was a continuous finger pointing fight all around.
Yeah, you had 3 different jurisdictions
Yeah,
and,
it's fed,
and not just
provincial,
all
and
with,
just.
not all working off of the same legislation. Right, so that's even more complicated. You're very fortunate, like the base obviously isn't involved, First Nations not involved, fairly simple with 3 municipalities for this system. So it makes it, that complexity comes out. You're all working off of the same legislation, which really helps.
Through a mutual aid agreement, you're only receiving what you're asking for, correct?
Correct.
So it's not a matter of initially there's something going on, everybody's involved all of a sudden. It's at our behest,
Yeah.
correct?
And that's where we talked about those triggers to activate, of knowing what those triggers are. So if you haven't hit that trigger, Cypress County also knows that that trigger is the one that gets them involved and it hasn't been hit yet. So if they're deploying ahead of time, then there's a problem. But again, if it's very clear what those triggers are, and a lot of emergency management plans won't have that trigger in there, but it's really important to have that so that everybody knows when the go button is being hit. It's not a surprise.
You mentioned one municipality pulled out of ours. Who pulled out of ours?
I'm not recalling who, I'll have to go back to American Ask, but it was news to us at the last one we presented at Medicine Hat. So I don't know if it was Cypress County or Medicine Hat or Pearson, but our understanding, do you know?
I don't.
That was news to us.
I got a smirk. I think know what the smirk means. Who she thinks it is.
Regardless, the
Okay, let's see.
2019 agreement is legislation has come in since, more legislation has come in since 2019. So even if all parties were involved, still it's legislation's changed in 2020, 2024, 2025. There's been 3 iterations of legislation since that last agreement.
Anything else from up here? Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
No motion you made, just receive for information. Everything's got to be done at IMC level anyways. Okay, someone would like to make that motion, Matt? Thank you. All in favor for information? That is carried. And I guess a motion for adjournment.
That's your evening.
Wait, thank you very much, guys.
My goodness.
Thank you,
Made
Ben.
that motion.
Dwight did?
Yeah.
The Councillor did at 5:38.
Oh,
All in favor? And we are adjourned.